If you thought Mighty Number 9 was a disastrous Kickstarter campaign, you haven't seen shit. Now, just to give you a little refresher about Mighty Number 9, in a world where Capcom has practically given up on the Mega Man series, Mighty Number 9 was supposed to be the beacon of hope and spiritual successor to the neglected franchise. It was supposed to be a big fuck you to Capcom for the community that they abandoned. People were immediately amped about this endeavor, especially when it was being spearheaded by Keiji Inafune, whose name misguidedly became synonymous with Mega Man. Thus, the Kickstarter closed with an incredible $4 million from 68,000 backers, including PayPal donations. Everything seemed to be going splendidly, and from there, all fans could do was wait in anticipation of a genre-defining title. Unfortunately, they would be met by numerous shady practices, like finding additional funding from third-party corporations and publishers, which goes against the spirit of Kickstarter, or starting another Kickstarter for a second game before Mighty Number 9 was even finished. Broken promises like, the game is pretty much finished, or there will be no more delays, and subsequent unprecedented delays, all of which culminated to a mediocre final product that nowhere near lived up to being a Mega Man spiritual successor. And more recently, there was the whole fiasco with one of the physical rewards, Famicom or NES-style boxes with accompanying manuals. Not only was the manual not full color as promised, they didn't even fit inside the Famicom version of the box. One last fuck you from Keiji Inafune, who, by the way, was never the mastermind behind Mega Man to begin with. He produced many of the games and did some art for them, but he certainly wasn't the creative force behind them. As Platinum Games' Hideki Kamiya tweeted back in September 2012, Keiji was mainly a businessman, and apparently not a great one considering Mighty Number 9's utter failure. So yeah, long story short, this whole Mighty Number 9 fiasco was a complete disaster, going down as one of the worst Kickstarter campaigns in history. Now, with that out of the way, allow me to introduce to you a Kickstarter campaign that asked Mighty Number 9 to hold their beer. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Unsung's story, Tale of the Guardians, an ongoing disaster. Much of the information in this video comes from an article by Jason Schreier from website Kotaku, alongside my own research. So here's what happened. Unsung's story was a game being developed by Asumi Matsuno, the creator of the highly renowned Final Fantasy Tactics. The game was first announced back in September 18th, 2013, alongside a digital card game of the same universe in partnership with a company called Playdeck, with reassurances that both games would be out by the end of 2014. A couple months later, on January 14th, 2014, Playdeck launched a Kickstarter campaign with a goal of $600,000, promising to reimagine a classic game genre, as Yasumi Matsuno weaves together one of the complex and rich game worlds that he is known for, with inspiring class-based tactics gameplay. On this date, Jason, the Kotaku editor, decided to back this game for $20, with the estimated delivery date of pledges indicating that the game would actually be out by July 2015. The following month, on February 3rd, 2014, Playdeck's PR company contacts Jason with an opportunity to interview Yasumi Matsuno himself about Unsung's story, stating that the interview has to take place on February 10th and has to be in a Q&A format. Jason responded that while he'd be happy to do an interview, the date and format cannot be dictated. 3 days later, on February 6th, 2014, Playdeck's PR responds stating that they won't be able to set up the interview after all. 6 days later, on February 12th, 2014, with just 2 days left until the Kickstarter campaign is over, Unsung's story is still not fully funded, sitting at $511,000. $89,000 short of its initial $600,000 goal. So that day, Jason wrote an article talking about how he thought it was crazy that a spiritual successor to Final Fantasy Tactics, one of the greatest games of all time, wasn't an instant hit. He said, considering the talent involved, Matsuno, artist Akihiko Yoshida, and composer Hitoshi Sakimoto, and considering the public's general love for all things Final Fantasy Tactics, it's strange to see a project like this go unfunded. This article ended up being the last push that the Kickstarter campaign needed. On February 14th, 2014, just hours before the deadline, Unsung Story successfully managed to fund its campaign by raising a total of $660,000. The part that Jason played in aiding this campaign ended up being one of his greatest regrets. From there, Playdeck provided what Jason described as mundane updates about the staff and other high-level details surrounding the game for a couple weeks. Finally, on March 21st, 2014, Playdeck provided a backer update with reassurances that it won't be long before they can share lots of content about Unsung Story, promising that great things are on their way. To backers' dismay and concern, subsequent updates had an uncanny focus on the Unsung Story digital card game, which wasn't what backers had signed up for. Then, on July 31st, 2014, Playdeck's community manager provided a timeline of promises for the rest of 2014, among them being gameplay details of the game. They also addressed backers' concerns and clarified that the Unsung Story strategy game would happen before the digital card game. Finally, the July 31st, 2014 update promised that there would be another progress update the following month, August 2014. When August 2014 finally came and went, there was no update. This was the first of many broken promises. Playdeck finally posted an update on September 5th, 2014, where they shared details about the game's professions and some story details, nothing worth too much attention. From there, the following month, on October 16th, 2014, Playdeck announced the launch of their forums, and the month after that, on November 26th, 2014, they shared some more story details alongside some new artwork. Then, silence for 3 months. Next time backers would hear from Playdeck was on February 20th, 2015, which is a little over a year after the successful funding of Unsung Story's Kickstarter campaign at this point. The update featured new story details, some more concept artwork, and some really rough-looking gameplay screenshots. This was certainly not the kind of quality backers were expecting with $660,000 worth of funding and a full year of additional development, especially with only 5 months to go before the game's estimated July 2015 delivery date. 2 weeks later, on March 6, 2015, another update provided details about the game's schools and character attributes and showcased a couple more rough-looking screenshots. This was then followed by another month of silence before the next update on May 15, 2015, which talked about the game's combat and equipment system, showcased more artwork, and promised the following. Development on the game is progressing nicely. As we continue down this path, we will finalize a development timeline to share with everyone later this summer. By the way, at this point, the game was 2 months away from its July 2015 estimated delivery date. From there, 4 months went by without an update. Not only did the game miss its July 2015 estimated launch window, there was nary a peep from the game's developers, leaving people wondering if the game's development had been canceled and Playdeck had just run away with the money. Playdeck finally broke their silence with a dreary update on September 21st, 2015. In the update, Playdeck CEO Joel Goodman began by apologizing for the lack of updates while reassuring backers that the game hasn't been canceled. He also confirmed that the game has been delayed with the following statement: Unsung is and has been in development, although development has been going more slowly than we anticipated, and I will cover that as well. There is no way to avoid stating the fact that the game will be delayed until next year, and we wish it were otherwise. All of this was a baffling contradiction to the statement provided on their last update 4 months ago, which reassured backers that development on the game is progressing nicely. Things went from bad to worse as Goodman's update continued. He proceeded by announcing that they've had plans for a while now to partner with an outside publisher for Unsung Story, which goes against the principles of crowdfunding. The excuses he provided for the lack of disclosure was shady at best. He said, Being that these discussions were confidential in nature, we were unable to discuss neither this nor any of the details. I understand that in hindsight, it might appear that we could have just shared this with you all, but without knowing how it was going to impact the development and any announcements concerning the game, we chose to wait it through that time frame. Goodman then talked about some of the development issues that they've faced over the last few months, namely financial crunch that caused them to reduce some key staff. Furthermore, to backers' further dismay, Goodman proceeded to outline out of nowhere plans to implement online PvP, including matchmaking, rankings, a tournament system, create game system, friends lists, and chat. Naturally, backers were upset by this particular announcement since Unsung's story was advertised to be a spiritual successor to Final Fantasy Tactics, not a multiplayer game. Now, the excuse that was given for the implementation of PvP was that it would provide data that would allow them to balance the game, but single-player experiences have never been about balance or fair chance. These words only come into play in multiplayer games, where every player has to have an equal playing field. So to use that data, the multiplayer data, and base the single player experience around that was simply wholly misguided. Backers knew that balancing single player from multiplayer data meant that the single player experience could be compromised, not to mention that the addition of PvP would only divert resources from the core single player game, which has already been delayed from its initial July 2015 launch window. Finally, for this update, Goodman promised backers more constant updates with quotes like, "We will work to rectify that and will outline the plan going forward, one that will keep you in the loop henceforth," and "It's been our loss up to this point not involving the great community of backers we have, and going forward, we'll be more transparent while looking to engage you on the development progress as it unfolds." Plot twist, these promises would be broken. Following this fiasco, 9 days later, on September 30th, 2015, during an Ask Me Anything session on Reddit, Joel Goodman was asked if he can provide any proof of Unsung Story's development. Goodman replied with, "On the next major update, we will have video footage of in-game gameplay and we'll go into more details on the UI development direction." According to Kotaku editor Jason, Goodman also made it clear that Yasumi Matsuno's involvement with Unsung Story has already ended at this point. Yup, the Final Fantasy Tactics creator and the one who was supposed to lead and create its spiritual successor basically jumped ship. Not a great confidence booster. At this point, the Unsung Story that was originally promised was pretty much dead. Following the Reddit AMA, the following month, on October 20th, 2015, Playdeck posted the first ever gameplay footage of the game. To backers' dismay and expectations, the game looked pretty dreadful. At best, it could pass for a shitty, half-assed mobile game. This is apparently where $660,000 and a year and a half of development went. To add insult to injury, after promising an update the following month with a more thorough video going over the specifics of combat, Playdeck went incognito for another 4 months. The next time backers would hear from Playdeck was on February 6th, 2016, and the update had nothing but bad news to offer. They stated that the company was once again facing development setbacks, going through financial hardships, and losing key staff members. It was also suggested that Playdeck would be pausing Unsung Story's development to work on other short-term products for the financial health of the company. Finally, they discussed the possibility of exploring options for outside development help and to bring an outside team to assist them. At this point, backers were beginning to request for refunds en masse, but to no avail. These requests were all but ignored. 21 days later, on February 27th, 2016, Playdeck provided a slightly more optimistic update, stating that they have been able to secure more funding through a secured creditor. They also informed their backers that roughly $1.5 million has been spent on various aspects of Unsung Stories development, which is shocking considering the results so far. Apparently, this is what a $1.5 million game looks like. The update then detailed the various game elements that they have allegedly been working on, including the dreaded PvP that nobody asked for. They also briefly touched upon refunds, basically stating that they'll consider it once they get in a position of stronger financial health. Finally, the update closed with a statement that an update would come sometime in the following month, March 2016. Plot twist, no updates on March 2016. The next update came the following month, on April 9th, 2016. They began by stating that they should have another update with more game-specific progress, features, and design details in May, while reassuring that they're on track for a playable beta for Unsung Story containing a few single-player levels with 2 character schools and PvP to be released in fall 2016. That was their promise, a beta demo of sorts for fall 2016. The update closed with other promises, such as, we want everyone to know that we are close to being on track with our latest development plan, and should have some game-specific development updates to start sharing in May. Over the summer, we'll have new screenshots, videos, and art to share, along with gameplay-specific details about our progress on the character and battle systems and the game world. From there, May 2016 came and went with nary an update. The next month, on June 28, 2016, Playdeck posted an update apologizing for the lack of updates while reassuring backers once again that the beta is on track for fall 2016. They closed with, as of now, we estimate to have new art, screenshots, and design details to show by September, and we will have another design update for you next month. Thus, next month, July, came and went, and no updates. August came and went, and no updates. Finally, on September 21st, 2016, Playdeck provided an update announcing that they have entered into a strategic agreement with a major company who will be providing design work for the tactics game, as well as, get this, Unsung branded games in the future. Holy shit, talk about jumping the gun. As for the lack of updates, they had this to say. We had hoped to have some design and art progress to show by this month, but we are just now getting the time we need to spend with our partner on the core mechanics and the game world, and need to do this before providing updates with visual content progress. Rather than making estimates as to when we think content updates will be ready, we will stick to updating on the design progress more regularly, and then update you when we have a good step forward with some content progress, whether it be concept art or screenshots of in-game progress. Moving on, you guessed it, no updates on October or November 2016. The next update came on December 23rd, 2016, and it only offered another apology for the lack of updates, more tired progress reports, and talks of gameplay mechanics and systems and whatnot, and yet more promises for future updates that would never come. It's worth noting, by the way, that by now, the fall 2016 window for Unsung Stories beta has long passed, and it's a topic that didn't come up during their December 2016 update. In fact, it's a topic that would never come up again. And this, ladies and gentlemen, would be the last we would hear from Playdeck in a very long time. As the new year, 2017, rolled by, over 8 months would go by with absolute silence from the project. On June 21st, 2017, Kotaku editor Jason, who was getting tired of waiting, reached out to Playdeck CEO Joel Goodman for an update, and he responded with, "In about a week or so, I should have some solid news to share with you that will positively impact the project. When I do, I'll reach back out to you. Thanks." A week came and went, and still no news. Playdeck would finally break its 8-month silence on August 1st, 2017. That's right, very recently. If you thought things couldn't get worse, oh, don't worry, things get much worse. In this update, Playdeck essentially announced that they would be jumping ship, stating that their involvement has come to an end and that publisher-developer Little Orbit would be taking over. Yep, God knows where those $660,000 went, Playdeck just ran away with it. This was followed up by a ray of hope though. The same day, Little Orbit CEO Matthew Scott released his own update on the matter. Here are a few highlights from his statement. I would like to start by taking a moment to introduce myself. My name is Matthew Scott, and I'm the CEO of Little Orbit. We started as a small game developer in 2003 and have grown into a small publisher in the last 7 years. To date, we have primarily focused on retail with 20 titles on many different platforms, working alongside Cartoon Network, DreamWorks, Warner Brothers, and Mattel. Inevitably, many of you will Google us, and you may have your doubts, which is okay. This project has struggled, but give us a little time and hopefully we'll surprise you. I am a gamer at heart, and my first love has always been turn-based tactics games. I met the Playdeck team a couple months ago and got a first-hand look at the amazing work from Yasumi Matsuno. Simply put, this game needs to exist, so I am excited to be taking this project over and helping deliver it to the community. I recognize that this project is now more than 2 years late from when it was originally supposed to ship, but rather than jump into lofty promises, I want to level set expectations with a bit of both bad and good news. First, the bad news. Little Orbit is starting from scratch. We have spent hours going through the Kickstarter comments and researching all of the project materials, and I feel the backers have made one thing clear. We need to focus on the original single-player game and Matsuno's design that was promoted during the campaign, and that is exactly what we're going to do. At this point, our primary goal is to separate the years of modifications and changes that were made while Playdeck attempted to deliver something to their backers. Second, the good news. I want to make this absolutely clear. Little Orbit will honor the Kickstarter backer rewards at no extra cost. I can't know how frustrating this has been for the many fans of this game, but over the coming weeks, we will be reaching out to make sure we have all the current information for each of you, so that rewards can be delivered properly as we make progress. In a separate comment, Scott replied backers' questions with the following statement. Dear backers, I appreciate the many questions, both private and public, that have come in. Taking on this project was a very difficult decision for us. Honestly, there is a lot of toxicity and unhappiness, and I knew it would be risky to involve ourselves in this uphill battle. But in the end, I personally made the decision to take on Unsung's story. I have seen the entire Matsuno design, and it was simply too compelling to walk away from. There are significant pieces that have never been discussed, and we look forward to sharing those in the near future. In the meantime, here are a couple of quick answers. 1. We didn't pay any significant amount to Playdeck. There was a token amount paid that ensured the ownership of the design, name, and game IP would be ours legally to move forward with. We felt it was better for all involved if Playdeck no longer had any attachment. 2. We also didn't get any of the Kickstarter money. This was simply not a monetary-based transaction. We sincerely love what this game could be, and it is our intention to see it through for the community. Little Orbit funds all of its games internally, so that is our plan for this project. 3. We got everything Playdeck has done to date, but we are not interested in looking backwards at any of the previous development, 3D art, or conceptual design. In addition to the English design and story, we also got the original Japanese work from Yasumi Matsuno. Bits of this are being retranslated back to English, so we can get a clearer understanding of his core ideas. 4. We will not do any work on the multiplayer feature or card game until we deliver the original single-player storyline. 5. Again, we plan to honor the Kickstarter rewards entirely at our own expense. Lastly, we want to respond to those of you that have reached out asking for refunds. I can't know the sheer amount of frustration you have endured. We are here to help, but we aren't in a position to do that right now. Please know that we are starting from scratch without the money you actually invested, so all of our funding needs to go into the game and delivering this Kickstarter. If we start giving refunds right now, it will simply hurt everyone who backed the project and limit our ability to finish. Sincerely, Matthew Scott. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the last we have heard of Unsung Story as of the publishing of this video. I will say that Little Orbit at least makes a good first impression. They've got the right attitude and approach, a realistic outlook, and a willingness to be open with their backers. Well, the backers didn't technically back Little Orbit, but it's good to see that Little Orbit is treating the backers like their own. And Little Orbit is doing this all out of their own pocket. They got none of the Kickstarter money to begin with. It is kind of admirable what they're doing. They're intent on unfucking a truly fucked situation. It couldn't have been easy to make the decision to helm such a train wreck with all the negative PR surrounding it. This is the type of decision you can only make if you're really passionate about something, and that's a start. It does seem like they are passionate about this, or at least the CEO, Matthew Scott. However, until we see proof of Little Orbit's commitment, it is impossible to trust them at this point in time. Nothing against them per se, but just, again, the whole situation is fucked, so it's understandable that people would be skeptical about anything surrounding this project. There's also the fact that Little Orbit's game development portfolio doesn't boost confidence either, having only developed titles such as Adventure Time games, Barbie games, Monster High games, How to Train Your Dragon 2, Kung Fu Panda, Penguins of Madagascar, Disney Violetta Rhythm and Music, and Young Justice Legacy, none of which have been all that well received. It is worth noting, however, that all of their projects so far have been direct adaptations of existing cartoons, animations, and intellectual properties, which have strict restrictions in terms of creative freedom and development timeline. And more often than not, a second-rate development environment will only yield a second-rate product. With Unsung Story, on the other hand, this is their own project for once. They are free from their usual shackles, giving them a chance to put all of their experience to use and show the world what they're capable of. Maybe all they need is the right IP and the right development environment to churn out a genuinely good product. Maybe they'll surprise us now that they're working on their own brand new game from scratch. I'm not holding my breath quite yet though. I need to see how Little Orbit works a little bit before I can make any kind of determination. Currently, as it stands, I don't expect Unsung Story to be a mind-blowing game that lives up to the original promise of a spiritual successor to the acclaimed Final Fantasy Tactics. At best, under Little Orbit's leadership, I expect the game's development to be smoother for sure, and I expect the game to be released at least in some coherent form. Unlike Playdeck, Little Orbit does have many years of experience in game development, even if their portfolio isn't necessarily awe-inspiring. Despite my doubts, I do wish Little Orbit the best of luck. I hope they prove my doubts wrong. I hope that at the end of all of this, backers can at least get something substantial and satisfying with Little Orbit now coming into play. If there was any time for Little Orbit to prove their worth as game developers, it is now or never, as the end result of Unsung Story under their direction could make or break this studio. Fingers crossed that they'll succeed. I want these underdogs to rise to the occasion and turn this mess into something successful. That would be one hell of a story, huh? Anyway, with that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. Let us know in the comments below what your first impressions are of Little Orbit. Do you think they could make this game good, or do you think that their portfolio speaks for itself? Also, if you enjoy my content, I hope you'll consider supporting me on Patreon to help our community remain independent from third-party sponsorship and corporate interference. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out!